Hey there guys, it's Toasty Fresh and I'm back once again with a subject video, and it's probably going to be time for me to do a bit more ranting and kick up another bit of a stink maybe. I mean, I don't know, I guess we'll see when I get into the subject of the video and get into the ranting. But this video is going to be about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I've decided to do a video on this because it's something that's kind of close to my heart. It was a big game, one of those key kind of core memories of my growing up with video games. And the original was a game that, you know, it kick-started a long-standing love affair with the role-playing game genre, especially the Japanese role-playing game genre with me. So I thought I'd do a little bit of my views on the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and just say what I think about it and what I think they're not doing right from what I've heard about it, and just a few of my thoughts on what I can remember from reading an article. I read an article a few weeks ago, but it was current at the time, and I mean I did do a video on it, but then in my eagerness to put it out there, and I only had so much time to do it, I forgot to put my headset on, and all you could hear was me very faintly talking impassionately about this subject. But going on to the subject, I mean, there's been a lot of games that have had the little HD touch up and these little remakes, and they've been quite popular things to go ahead and happen with gaming now. So like, you've had a Final Fantasy X already that's had the HD polish up on the PlayStation 3, and it'll probably be on the PlayStation 4 as well at some point. And now they're going to do a remake of Final Fantasy VII, which is an actual whole new remake. Obviously, because there's already been the kind of touch-ups on the Steam versions and things like that on the PC, where they've updated the sprites on the older version, the original version. It's like a 1.0, 1.5 kind of version. But just on the subject of the remake and how they've gone about this SquareSoft, and there's a few things again I don't agree with, and I suppose some people could say, "Oh, it's knee-jerk reaction," but we'll get onto the big topic first, which is it being spread over multiple games, kind of like Final Fantasy X and X-2, and then there was 13, I think it was, and 13-2 that had sequels that ran along, but this isn't really that because it's just going to be a straight up remake. It's just done in a modern flavour, and I just think with the modern technology and Blu-rays holding so much memory and things like that, I don't know if they can really justify making this over, so many set installments. Or I thought about it, and people can justify it, how they like. I've heard people saying, well, with the updated graphics and the world, and how they're going to make it bigger, and this and that, and to fully upgrade it to today's standards, it wouldn't fit on one CD or Blu-ray, which is fair enough. But then why not go the original route that the original Final Fantasy VII took, and have multiple CDs, just bring the game out in one thing on multiple Blu-rays, just like the original. Have if it needs to be, have three Blu-rays, just like the original. Why do they have to do separate games? And it just smacks of cashing, to be honest, to me, because you think about it, and it's a game that's big, legendary title and name and franchise that's going to sell well regardless of what anybody says. This game is going to go out, people are going to go out and buy it just on the name alone. But you think £50 maybe for the first game, they're going to charge £50 for the second game, And putting to mind that they haven't said exactly how many games are going to be released. They said they still don't know. It could be 3. They could go on the line of, well, there were 3 CDs on the original game, so we're going to do that. Or they could do 4, or however many. They could shorten the games down and just do it as a kind of almost episodic thing. So I don't agree with that, and to me it just smacks of, this is one of the big draws now to the Final Fantasy franchise. It's something that's people have wanted them to do for a long time. There's been a lot of interest in that. Whenever people bandied about HD remakes, people were like, why don't you make a HD remake of Final Fantasy VII? It's always one that I've seen cropping up time and time again. Squaresoft probably know this, and sort of thought about, yes, we can make some money out of this. And I just think it's a money grabbing kind of thing. You think 50 quid a pop, or even 40, you're looking at in the region of £150 off each customer if they bring out 3 different games in that mould. And I just think it's unnecessary, really. And that's just my view on it. I don't really see why they'd have to do that. Or if they do, they should be adequately priced to reflect that, maybe, and to reflect that people are going to want to go out and buy them. And I mean, fair enough if the game is the size of a whole game, like they said, but I just don't see how they can pad Final Fantasy VII into that. I mean, I know there was unexplored plot points of the first one, like the whole fact that originally would be able to resurrect Aerith, or Ares, however you want to pronounce it. I think it's Aerith. And there was also the guy in the Sector 7 slums who you couldn't really do anything for. And there's a couple of other things in the game that were never completed, really, and extra stuff they wanted to add, and extra plot points that they wanted to put in there. But I can't see how they can fill a game to 3 games or whatever they're going to do. And some of those plot points have actually been kind of addressed. I mean, they had Crisis Core on the PSP, which was kind of a fan service game as well. It was kind of a different thing, but that in a way was different. It was a very different animal because it was, you kind of knew what it was. It was fan service. It was saying, look, here we go, we're going to retrace the steps of a character that people were interested in, and you never really got to see much of, and that was Zack, and going over his origins, and you got to see the untold story of, what happened to him. And that was kind of cool, and that's fine. And they've had other spin-off games like Dirge of Cerberus, which was set after the events of the game, so that again didn't really interfere with the core game. And so that is a big point of my problem with the game. But it's not only that, the fact that they've decided to change the game, the makeup of the game entirely. Like, from what I read, it said that it's going to be more Dissidia inspired. So, gone are the turn-based combat and all those kind of tactics. And I don't know if the material is still going to be there. They must have some way of incorporating that into it. But basically they said they're going to have to move with the times, and they've got to engage with a new audience and modern gamers, and apparently modern gamers are going to be too easily bored, and they're not going to want to play a turn-based or role-playing game anymore, which I think is wrong, really. And that's another thing that I've got a little bit of a problem with, and maybe I'm stuck in my ways, and maybe I'm just holding on to something, and like some of the other fans, you could accuse us of being a bit precious with something that we feel we've got a bit of ownership to. but it is just isn't the same game to me. If you're gonna change that and you're gonna make it Final Fantasy, well, basically, my view on the game is that it's Final Fantasy 15 from the scenes I've seen of the combat and things like. It's Final Fantasy 15 in a Final Fantasy 7 skin, basically. It's going to be that modern game, except they're making it Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 7 flavour. It's not Final Fantasy 7 because that isn't how the game was. And although a lot of the characters that I've seen look right, some of them they haven't got quite right. Like Barrett, for me, it doesn't look like the Barrett in the games, and he's gone very kind of Gennaro character, generic kind of blackmail character, and just doesn't have the character of the other games. And it's the same with a few of them. I think they've lost some of the kind of character that they had, and it seems a little bit more soulless. And I don't know if that's just because of my rose tinted spectacles about this game that, you know, obviously I'm going to handcraft the original, and I'd have to say, really, I was one of the ones that probably wasn't desperate for a remake because the original was fine to me. I could still go and play the original now and enjoy it just as much as I did when I played it back then. Yes, you know, the sprites look clunky and polygony, but at the end of the day, that was part of the charm when you look back at it now. That you can look back and see, oh, that's what games look like and how they progressed through to the other Final Fantasies. And it's a bit of a telling sign that I think a lot of people that I've seen, and I don't know whether they'll agree with me, Final Fantasy fans, as the series has gone on, we've connected less and less with the games and the characters. Like Final Fantasy 13 was a pretty decent role-playing game. It was nice and pretty, you know, beautiful to look at, and I just didn't really engage with some of the characters half as much as what I did with the old games. So maybe that's me being a bit more resistant, and you know, I'm getting old or something. I don't know, but it just seems like it's not Final Fantasy VII. It's a totally different game, and it's just using the Final Fantasy VII name. And not saying that it won't be enjoyable, and it probably will. I mean, I played the Final Fantasy 15 demo, and it was okay. And this is probably another thing that will be contentious, and there will be maybe people won't like, but I wasn't all that blown away by Final Fantasy 15, the Platinum demo. It was very beautiful to look at, and it was interesting, but it didn't blow me away. It didn't seem that much more impressive than Final Fantasy 13. A little bit more, but it didn't speak to me of, you know, the wow factor, which is what you'd usually get from a Final Fantasy game. Like, I remember watching the trailers to Final Fantasy VIII when that was about to be released, and having this kind of great excitement to see it and things like that. And the graphics at that point, you know, blew you away when you saw the cutscenes and things like that. This one, it's a bit more fallen flat. The game was okay. I guess it's maybe I'm just not that into that kind of battle system, really. It felt awkward and unwieldy to me, and I just didn't like it. It just didn't work for me. It's just not my cup of tea, really. But yeah, that were my thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII remake, and a couple of the big things that went wrong with it. My personal view is that for the Final Fantasy VII remake, they're gonna make one, update the graphics, bring it up to spec with what people are used to seeing now, but keep the old gameplay, keep the turn-based, keep the materia system, keep the characters looking, keep the essence that the characters had, just give them a high def version. So make Barrett this big hulking dude with a big massive machine gun on his arm. You know, keep the other characters, just keep the essence. I think some of them didn't look too bad, but Barrett wasn't one I thought they seemed to get him wrong. He just didn't look like him really. But that's what I mean. They didn't have to change very much about it. That's why I thought the kind of 1.5 version was pretty good, because it had the updated sprites, it had a bit of a polish up of the graphics, and it had a little bit of a harder version of the game. For if you'd already played through it, you play through it on a new mode, it makes it a bit harder, gives it a bit of a freshen up and a different way to play the game, and I thought that was fun. And I think that's all really that Final Fantasy needed. Keep the story, maybe just fine tune the story a little bit where some things didn't quite work out as well, like the whole Red 13 thing was kind of off-putting, where his character changed totally from being someone that seemed quite wise as to afterwards when they found out in terms of his race he was quite young. Then they all started treating him as a kid, even though he was 40 something, which he was still twice as old as all the rest of the, well, most of the other characters. And I kind of didn't see how that worked, but despite a few little plot flaws in the game, it's still an absolutely legendary role-playing game and a legendary PlayStation game, and I'd like to see more of the essence of that kept. And for me, if you're going to remake a game, or kind of how they've tried to do it, you know, show it to a new generation, then show them the game that it was, just in a more palatable form for them, you know, the graphics wise, but let them pick up the game and think, yeah, I like this, and that way the original fans can get something out of it. New fans would probably get something out of it. I don't think they need to try and pander to this notion that turn-based role-playing games are old hat and nobody wants to play them anymore. I think that's kind of wrong. But tell me what you guys think. Tell me what you think they're doing right with with this remake. What are they doing wrong? Did you agree with me, or did you totally disagree with what I've said? It'd be interesting to see other Final Fantasy fans' thoughts on the remake. And what do you think of Final Fantasy 15? Are you super excited for it? End of the day, I'm still hopeful, and I probably still will enjoy it, and I'll probably jump into it and try and get used to the new style of play, and try not to be so harsh on it. It still looks amazing, and the graphics and things like that, and probably the wider world will look amazing. I mean, we only saw a slight glimpse of what the world looks like, so I'm not going to really comment too much on that, but it'd be interesting to see your thoughts. Excited for the new game. What do you think of the remake? Are you still stoked for it? Are you a bit nervous? Me, like I said, it's a bit nervous with the kind of direction they're going in for this. And also Final Fantasy XIV, the online game, is it worth having a look into? Because I've not actually played it yet. And is it something that fans of the earlier games like me would be interested in? But drop in and give me a shout, a comment, like, or whatever you want to do. It'd be greatly appreciated. But that's all I got time for, and it's game over from me.